I know Joe Stanek is trying to hop on. He'll get out in a minute. He's working his laptop in our office here.
Okay.
Okay. Is he close to getting on, Dave? Do you know?
I think I just heard him walk upstairs, so he should be on any second, but.
Oh, he's at the office. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think you can start whenever you like.
Okay. We will start. I appreciate everybody taking time out of a busy schedule and a busy season and a nice day today to continue talking. And we're so close to the end, it's unreal. I think I've said that before, but we always mean it when we say it. The Septic Systems Committee, the newest news, if everyone's not aware of it, is that the governor's office did approve the preliminary paperwork that allows us to produce the bill that allows it to be published in the New York State Register, which then requires us to finish the ledge if it's not already finished and have the statutory public hearings. And that and a couple of other spots is why we're here today. So jumping right through item number 2, draft regulations and SAPA documents, Dave and Carla, and any questions and answers anybody has. And as always, jump in anytime. You know, this is an open forum for all of us. So Dave?
Yeah, so I can start and then Carla can jump in more with process. So everybody should hopefully have received a copy of what we sent out. I think pretty much everybody here is on the committee. It wasn't a lot of time in advance. I was trying to get it out earlier, but Carla was reminding me of the law, which could only be sent out yesterday. So we heeded her advice. And so the primary thing is if you've had a chance to take a look at the regulations themselves, that is really the meat of what we're talking about. The other State Administrative Procedures Act documents are helpful and informative. The one that you've already seen kind of mostly a draft copy of is the regulatory impact statement. That's kind of the overall programmatic document that we've all kind of collectively been working on for about a year. The other ones are simply required by the state of New York, but what is it? Maybe 7 pages of the regulations themselves are really kind of the crux of the matter. So I don't know how many folks have had an opportunity to take a look at that, but we would be more than happy to provide an overview, which I believe is primarily on the second page of your agenda. That's kind of the regulations compressed into a nutshell. And I guess the process is what most people are interested in after that. We do have some programmatic items that we're going to need to work through this fall. Particularly about Joe Thurman and I were just talking about community systems, such as Bill Mason is on the line, like it's Cundawide, that has several properties that drain to a common system. How would they be administered? Same thing with like in Arcady Bay. So those type of more detailed nuances are things that we're going to be working on at staff level and with a few of our partners. But I would say from this perspective, we're probably around the range of 95% squared away with our draft proposal, which again is nothing different than what was presented at the public information meeting that was perhaps a month or 2 ago, and it's going to be very similar to what we present at our public hearing, which is planned for November. So I guess you know, I'll give Carla an opportunity to chime in for anything I've missed. She has a few items below this where she can go into some more detail, but maybe to start out, does anybody have any questions on the draft regulations? They are public now, so you can feel free to share those within your organizations or any local entities that you might be involved with. It's always the commission's goal to be as transparent as possible. I did forward a copy immediately to Tony Hall at the Lake George Mirror. So Tony will, I'm sure, be getting the word out on some of the details. But with that, if anybody has any specific questions, comments, there's a few of us that are happy to try to answer. Has anybody read the draft regs yet? Thank you, Walt. I see a thumbs up. All right, that's good.
Dave, can I just make a comment? I think
Sure.
it was good reading, and it was nothing that, of course, we on the committee don't already know, but it was put down, just very easy to understand. I don't think the public's going to have any issues with it. And what I liked about it was in the different categories that you had for, from management to the job impact statement to regulatory impact statements, many times the same information was given again. But to me, that was just so much. It was needed to answer, to address those issues, but it was also great to reinforce everything again. So it was well done.
So Carla is our purveyor of what needs to be in each of those documents based on DEC guidance. And a lot of it is duplicative, but I agree with you, Kath, that sometimes it's good to see the program honestly isn't really that complicated.
No.
And I think all those required documents just kind of help focus the mind and say, there's really not a lot of smoke and mirrors here. It's a 5-year inspection program, very similar to what many other programs in New York State and down in New York City look like. And then we have a few extra standards that really aren't that difficult to understand either. So we're hoping as we approach the general public, we're getting to better understand the program. It's, for example, compared to our stormwater program, Joe Thinman administers our stormwater program very diligently. That can be a complicated program. There's running HydroCAD, there's all the various hydrology, there's the different standards that apply in certain circumstances. None of that really applies to the program we're talking about today, which is only a benefit, I think, to us moving forward in a fashion that people can support and understand. So we hope it's fairly simplistic. This is a product of all of us working together and coming up with things that seem to make sense. So hopefully everybody got that general impression. As everyone I think knows, we've gotten to this stage right now. We're not likely to change a lot of the content, if any, until the end of the public comment period. But if you see something glaringly wrong, let us know. It's gone through a gamut of people at Albany, and hopefully there's not a lot of errors in it. But yeah, thanks for the comments, Kath. And if anybody else has any, we're happy to hear them.
Yeah, Dave, I just have a question about the language as it now stands after having gone through the review at the governor's office. Were there many substantial changes that occurred, or is this pretty much the same document that you sent down?
We had the great benefit of having Tom and Kevin start with us from day one, both of which have extensive experience in wastewater. So any glaring issues that might have come up were identified real early by DEC and DOH. So everything that we've been talking about, it was some small substantive language changes that really didn't affect the core of the program, but read more cleanly and lined it up better with DEC and DOH language. So Walt, I think what we got in terms of substance didn't change very much, but the language of the regs at the end from where we started to where we finished really, I think, accommodates both the DEC and DOH's kind of to make them a little bit more synonymous through the programs. And I think it's only a benefit to where we are right now.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Questions, thoughts, comments? Did anybody find it overly difficult to read, understand the regs themselves?
No, I thought it was terrific, Dave. Very understandable.
Good, thanks. The language is primarily a combination of Joe and Carla with an eye, of course, towards the legality of it. But Joe is the technical guy, I'm the overview guy. We always have to try to find that balance between what people are going to understand, but still meets the letter of what it needs to meet. So I think we're pretty happy with where we are right now. But again, this is only a small bubble of people in the room here that you guys have been on it since day one. So once we start getting it out to the general public, then we'll find out if we're kind of preaching to the choir here or people can understand it and appreciate what we're trying to do. So Claudia, have you had a chance to read this kind of from the county perspective and see if it makes sense? You've been involved in the septic issue for a while now. What do you think?
I haven't had a chance to read what was released yesterday, Dave, but just scanning it now, I mean, it's consistent with what we've talked about all along, which was not exactly where the county was going. So, we had talked about probably almost a year ago at the county to try to revamp what we were thinking about and do it this way. So I think it's, as far as I can tell so far, it's understandable, clear.
Yep.
I think people will be able to, whether they can accept the regulatory changes is different than whether they can understand what you're trying to do.
Sure. Yeah, and we've had several conversations with people from across the state, myself and Joe and Jason, just to learn more about their programs and the initial hurdles that, you know, the different groups had challenges with as they were coming together. And to a program, they all said the first 5 years is going to suck. It's just difficult to get people on board and to have them, you know, get involved with the program if they're opposed to it. But once you get through that initial iteration of efficiencies and getting people on board, then it becomes pretty rote after that. Some of the programs that we were talking to are now in their 4th 5-year cycle. So, you know, we're not exactly on the cutting edge here for septic inspection program, which I think is a great benefit to us, having learned from them and spent hours on the phone with these guys and learning where the pitfalls are and how to address certain issues. So I think that's going to be helpful as we move forward.
I think another benefit is that we have been talking about this in the general community between the Park Commission and certain towns and the county for quite some time now. It's been a few years, so hopefully there won't be so much pushback to the overall programming.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope so.
You know, it's interesting to note that on August 4th, we had the public Zoom meeting, and it was pretty well attended. I think we had, what, maybe upwards of 100 people on the line, or in the high 70s, somewhere there.
Yeah.
And I just happened to be looking through my papers, and I just kept notes of brief notes that I can't even read now, most of them, about people that question it. My takeaway is that there was generally support. Someone might have had an important question that all of a sudden just opened up the whole process and made it understandable to them. One of the things one person got hung up on was, what if I just had my system inspected? Now you're going to come and force me to open it up again 12 months from now because my name's on the list. And we tried to explain how that would be bounced forward, et cetera, et cetera. And not sure we got through on that particular one, but overall, I would score the meeting quite well for us as a group, because the people had a lot of support for it. And these are the homeowners.
Right.
I got a quick question. And maybe I overlooked it in rereading these regs, but something occurs to me now that didn't occur to me before. I don't think the regs speak to someone that may have just recently upgraded, or I should say, replaced their system. So someone that just recently replaced their system, went through the channels they were supposed to go through, got it permitted by Washington County or whoever you might, whoever it may be, but is now at its first inspection considered substandard because perhaps it didn't have 3 feet of soil. It's late in the game to ask this question. Should there be a period that system gets additional time to not be upgraded within the first 5-year period?
So Joe can chime in on this. My understanding is we have language in there that says any permitted system is compliant with the regs. Is that accurate, Joe?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, this must have come up in our early discussions.
Okay,
So
maybe I forgot.
under the definition of substandard, it states blah blah blah. Right, so it gives definitions for substandard unless construction of that system was expressly permitted, you know, in accordance with 75A or DEC or whatever it is. So basically, if one of these review authorities gave a permit for this system to be where it is, even if it doesn't meet horizontal or whatever setbacks, that's okay, right? It got a permit from the right authority, because if we come in and say, hey, we don't think this is good, we're going to send it right back to that same governing body. They're going to probably do the same thing they already did. So if it got a permit to be where it is, then it's wouldn't be considered substandard. If it's malfunctioning, if it's failing, you know, that exemption, you know, wouldn't still apply. So if it's failing, it needs to be fixed. If it's substandard but has a permit to be there, it's okay.
Okay, no, thanks for reminding me of that. Now I remember that portion and I'm looking at it here.
Yeah, and we specified a permit for the construction of the system, so not like after the fact, you know, so knowing that it was, the design was looked at and approved through the front door.
And now I recall we did discuss for a while, but I don't think we put it in here purposely. There was going to be a time frame for that too, right? At one time, but I think we didn't speak to that in the regs purposefully.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any thoughts, questions, comments?
Yes. What happens in the case of a system that's very new and then the dwelling is rented for more than the normal or the regulated occupancy, and you do there is evidence of effluent coming up through the ground? Would that be something that we would take care of, the Department of Health, the DEC? Where is there any, I know that maybe this is, I'm going a little bit beyond, but what would happen in that situation?
Joe, you want to start with that, and then maybe even Kevin and Tom can chime in with their thoughts.
Yeah, this is sort of two issues. We talked about, should we look at Airbnbs differently than single family dwellings? And it's just very difficult for us to regulate that use. Everyone had an interest in it, but we weren't quite sure how to tackle it. And all the wastewater regs that exist speak to the number of bedrooms that a house has rather than the number of occupants that might be in it. So rather than reinvent the wheel, we stayed with the number of bedrooms and the current standards for design. And we don't address the Airbnb issue. That could be something that might be more easily addressed at the locality level. However, in any instance where there's effluent at the surface, the second part of your statement, that's a failure, right? So that system needs to be upgraded because clearly it's not meeting the demand for the system. And then maybe at that point in the review, it's, those other uses are brought to light and are accommodated.
Thanks, Joe. Just I have another question along those lines. If there are so many bedrooms, is there anything that says there's an occupancy for each bedroom?
No, Sean or Kevin can correct me on this, but there.
And I know we beat this up.
It's just strictly, I think it's
right now.
right in 75A. It's 110 or 130 gallons per bedroom, whether you're putting one person in there or whether you're putting 10 people in there. It's just by bedroom.
But
Yeah,
if,
the 70.
Go on. Sorry.
Oh, this is Kevin. I was going to say 75A, it's 110 gallons per bedroom per day. And that is based on the old, and I forget where it is, but it's basically 2 people per bedroom. Each person's using 55 gallons a day. As far as Airbnb, I thought most of the towns, well, maybe it's Lake George, and I thought Bolton had something about their permits required that they couldn't rent out more bedrooms than what their septic was designed for. So that should alleviate some of that.
We have that in Lake George.
How does that work, Dan? Can you be a little more specific?
Yeah, so the short-term rental program, we have an occupancy aspect of that where the county comes in and does a fire safety inspection and tells us how many people can legally fit in the building based on state code. And if they are on sewer, that is the occupancy that we allow them in the short-term rental permit. If they are on septic, their occupancy is limited to the capacity of their septic system. So good example is, let's say there's a humongous house on the lake, but it only has 3 bedrooms and the septic system is designed and sized for that 3 bedrooms. No matter how large their house is, they're getting an occupancy of 6. So people have, they've really not liked that, especially the larger homes that have smaller septic systems. But actually the positive byproduct of that is our code has prompted many septic replacements, upgrades, and right sizing. So there was one that we actually took him to court. He had a cesspool. He was renting illegally with a cesspool, and we got him to put in a compliant enhanced treatment system to get his rental permit. So it's about half, I would say half of the rental permits are properties on septic, the other half are on sewer. But it's been very valuable for us in terms of that occupancy and capacity restriction.
Wow, thanks, Dan. I think that when we have the public hearing, I wouldn't be surprised if we will receive comments along, that topic.
Bill, you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just, Kathy kind of touched on this, and I don't remember that we ever talked about this. Our program is an inspection program. If somebody knows that their neighbor's system is failing and they report that to us, are we an enforcement? Are we going to have an early inspection in that case? How are we proceeding on that?
Good question.
Yeah, I would agree, Bill. We haven't really talked about that topic. I
Right.
think if we hear about a failure, we'd probably continue with the current path, which is inform the DOH and or DEC, the responsible party. And we get involved in those now, Bill. Roger Smith goes out on each of those calls to meet with the DOH or the town, whomever it might be. So I think it would be kind of a community involvement. We would prefer as much of the current path as currently exists. We would probably like to keep that. So if the DOH comes out to a site and finds that the Bonneview Motel or Dave Wick's property has a surface failure, it's going to require an upgrade. And then you go to that approving body, and then the commission doesn't need to step in as a third layer. So I would think that would probably continue, but you're right, we haven't really talked about that too much.
But what you just said makes sense to me, that if it will come in, you'll get reports to the commission office, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And so then call in the other people, and at the same time, a commission staff member should go with them if they could, to keep us up to date, so that when the inspection comes, we kind of aren't blindsided. We know what's going on there. That all makes good sense to me. So
Yeah, a
thank
perfect
you.
example was 2-3 weeks ago. We got a call about a potential failing system on the southern part of Middleworth Bay. And so that call came into the commission office, and the commission informed the town, and I think it was the Department of Health who went out and could not identify any surface failures. And we happened to be doing some sampling work with SUNY Adirondack at that time. We went out and took some samples and also could not confirm any impacts from septic. But it's a good joint thing, because people generally don't know where to call. Is it DEC? Is it the Park Commission? Is it Department of Health? And so I think all three collectively involve the other parties, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page. A lot of times it's a town, sometimes it's DEC. So it seems to work right now. People can always find some level of satisfaction, and generally it'll come down to the permitting authority.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I thought that the DEC does not have jurisdiction if the discharge is 1,000 gallons or less. And for most of the residents, the residential homes on the lake, that's why they don't get involved. So that's why I had referred to the Department of Health, and that's what you just said in this case in Middleton Bay.
Yeah.
It's going to be the localities for most residences. The localities.
Oh,
Sorry,
okay.
it's going to be the local jurisdictions for most of the residences in the basin. Anything that's commercial and operating with the TR permit, it's going to go to Kevin and the DOH.
Right.
Anything with a speedies or a direct discharge to the water is going to go to DEC.
Okay. Thanks.
But these regs also say that the commission has the authority to inspect at any time.
I didn't see that. Where was that?
It's
Yeah,
in
thanks, Claudia.
646-3.6B. Right after where it says they shall be subject to inspection every 5 years. And it says any system may be subject to an inspection to ensure compliance.
Sure.
I guess
Yeah.
the question that leads me to then is, what happens if they are not compliant and they refuse to comply with the requirements to bring the system up to compliance? Are there any enforcement mechanisms for the Park Commission?
Yeah, Carla and Joe could probably talk about that a little bit. Carla, you want to start?
Yeah, the enforcement is going to be the same enforcement that is used for all of the other programs within the Park Commission. We just kept that we put that into the language here instead of reinventing the wheel. I don't have the regs right up here. I'm trying to do one screen with 4 screens open. Joe, do you have that right in front of you?
I don't, but I know, for all the other programs, it's $500.
Right, per day.
And that applies to this as well. So you're right, any system in the basin that is suspected of failure, we have the ability, the way the reg is written, to go and inspect and make sure it's not failing or substandard. And within the prohibitions, it's illegal to maintain a failing or substandard system. So then, we can use that leverage to get it to the local review authorities, and into that permit process and have that enforcement leverage with the potential civil penalties to make sure that things get done in a timely manner.
Right.
So 646-3.10, the last provision in the regs talks about administration and enforcement. But I think Carl and Joe summed it up. We have the authority to enforce our regulations, and we've been robust enough to make sure that non-compliant properties for whatever programs are able to come into compliance.
Right. Okay. So just relying on those other. I do have a question about the review authorities section at the very end.
Mhm.
The last one says about at the time of promulgation, the review authorities include the towns, Village of Lake George, Washington County. It doesn't include Warren County. Is
Right.
that, we have our building department, I think, covers this for all the towns that don't.
No.
Building codes doesn't do sanitary, just plumbing.
Yeah. So septic work approvals happen at the municipal level in Warren County. And I believe also in Essex County and in Washington County, it's done by the county itself. The towns don't do it.
So should all of the towns of Warren County be included there? Or are you saying because none of them have any of their own septic rules that
They're
the
by
Park
default.
Commission?
They're by default the applicable review authority. So Dan Bruce, Josh Westfall, I can't remember who's in Hague, but those are the towns that have the review authority now. So if I just built a new house in the town of Hague, that would go to the Hague code enforcement officer for review and to that town board. It wouldn't go to the commission. If you're in Washington County, John Graham is going to oversee those towns on that side. In Essex County, I believe it's Ticonderoga, but I can't speak to that. I don't think Hannah's on the phone. And I believe it's
yeah, I'm here. My video
Tyler.
just doesn't work. I have an old computer today. Essex County, we rely on town's code enforcement officers. Usually they issue like wastewater permits after they receive a engineered plan. And then they do a certificate of compliance at the end.
Yeah. So
What about Bolton, Dave? Bolton.
I was just looking at that language. That was an omission. So if we do have
I'm trying to think
if it's
what
not a
other
big deal to
towns-
change the reg, we should, the language is not meant to be exclusive, where it says this is the review authorities are and shall be limited to. It's just meant to be, helpful in understanding how this is going to work, but you're right. Bolton is omitted from this by
Or
accident.
maybe say, in my lawyer hat, you could say including but not limited to, but I know you're trying to list them as they exist now. So maybe add Bolton.
So I'm going to pop in here because I'm looking at the regs that are up on the website, and the review authority definition specifically says review authority means the municipal, county, and or state offices with wastewater jurisdiction. There's no listing. So what are you looking at?
The very last
It's at
paragraph.
the very last sentence of the whole thing. It just says, it's like an informational thing. It's not definitional. I agree,
Yeah.
I see. So at the time of promulgation, they include these.
So we let
Okay.
Josh off the hook inadvertently. You're back on the hook, Josh. Sorry.
Yeah.
Our
That
mistake.
that's not going to be a significant substantial, have to go back to Albany change. We're just adding it.
And Carla,
Because
is
they're not
that,
promulgated anyway.
is that a typo? It says Washington County, comma, the department, comma.
That's DEC.
Oh, the Department of Environmental Conservation, that should say, or
Yeah.
just
Well,
says the
I think
department?
it's already defined, Bill, up
Oh, okay.
earlier when it says
That's
the
how
department. it's
DEC defines themselves and the
Yep.
regs. We had
They're the
many
department.
changes in our regs
Yes.
to go to the.
Like New York City is the city.
Yeah, we
Correct.
consider ourselves the department.
There's only one.
Right. Not
Capital
really.
D.
Thank you.
Okay, good questions. Why don't we, maybe Ken skip it over to Carla and she can go through a few other points, and any other questions that you guys have at the time, maybe just bring them up as we go.
That'd be great.
Okay.
You're on, Carla.
So this was published today in the state register. If you just go on to this, state register at DOS, you pop it on there and you can see everything right in there. I think it's 2 or 3 pages of very tiny print, but it's on there. And it does refer everything back to the LGPC website. So we are good to go. We're moving forward. The public comment period is open. At this point, you have 60 days. You can't hold a public hearing until 60 days after the commencement of the public comment period, which is why we have, it's live. It was live yesterday. And we move forward. November 9th is our public hearing that right now is at the Fort William Henry at, I think it's at 4 o'clock or 4. Yes, at 4 o'clock. So there's your 60 days. We'll take public comment up until that time and through that time. Then we take public comment for 5 additional days. At that point, staff takes all the public comment together and they have to address each of the comments, put together the summary of findings and address that and present that to the commission. The commission at its either its next regularly scheduled meeting or the meeting after that, depending on the amount of comments, will look at it and say, okay, these are not significant. For example, there's, we can address all of these comments. There's no need to change anything except add Josh in there. And then at the end of the day, there's a commission adoption where they will adopt the regulations. We then submit the adopted regulations directly to DOS for the state register. The state register then waits 2 weeks and puts it in and it's published. It does not have to go back to Albany. We send it back as a courtesy. We've done that in the past, but there's no statutory or SAPA requirement for it to go back to Albany. That's assuming there's no significant substantive changes to this. If there are significant substantive changes, we start the process over again. In other words, we have to make the changes. We go forward, we submit everything to Albany again. Albany then reviews it again and it comes back to us. And we go through the process again, an additional public comment period, 60 days plus the 5 days. So the earliest that we could probably get this published in the state register would be in December. If we have our November 9th plus 5 days is November 14th, maybe at the, potentially at the November meeting, if staff is amazing, which they are, and they can get all their answers to the public comments by then within a week. Otherwise, it would be the December meeting. If the commission adopts it at December, we're looking at after the new year. So probably January would be the first time this would be promulgated and ready to go in the state register. Once it's in the state register, it's a regulation. That's an overview of the remainder of the process.
Ta-da, just like that.
Yeah, ta-da.
That's when we start distributing shovels to everybody.
Carla,
Yes.
quick question, just for clarity.
Sure.
Today starts the 60-day comment period.
Yesterday.
Which would be yesterday did. So that would go to 60 days from yesterday would be November 6th.
Right.
Okay. And then there's an additional 5 days from November 6th.
Nope, from the public hearing.
From the public hearing. So when we're articulating that in our outreach material, should we say the public comment period is open till November 6th? And in addition, no, yeah, how do you phrase that?
The public comment period is open till November 14th.
14th, that's what I wanted to check on, yeah.
Sure.
Because there's 60, so we'll just say the public comment period is open till November 14th.
Correct.
Okay, with a hearing on November 9th.
Right.
That's the simplest way to put it, right?
Perfect. And at this point, I don't know if, it really depends on the law, whether we do it this way or we do it in person. It looks like we're doing it in person. I don't know if we'll have it also streamed at the same time, but I think we all agreed to do it in person at the Fort William Henry.
And there'll be there'll be for people to send in comments,
They
during
send
that
them to
public.
Dave.
There's a email address to do that too, correct, right?
Yep, that's all Dave.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
So we just, okay. I just
And
want
all
to make
of
sure I
that-
use, when I'm putting out material to get people to write and support, get them to go to the right place. So,
That's all on the website, right?
right,
Absolutely. Everything is on the website. Jason and I and Justin and I were kind of going back and forth because I could not find it on the website. And Justin's like, it's right here. Just find it here. I'm like, well, I must just not be computer savvy because I can't find it. But if Justin says it's there and he gave me a link, I'm good to go.
yeah. And Justin, if you could send around a link, that would be great, because sometimes, I don't know if you'd experienced this recently, I've been having trouble getting into the website. I don't know if there's a glitch or something, or it's,
Well, that's interesting to hear. I know that we're having some difficulties in the office with domain name services, so there's some confusion there, and we're working on that. But as far as I know, the website has been accessible. But if that's not your experience, that's interesting. Has anyone else had any trouble getting onto the website?
You heard the Queen Elizabeth die.
No? Okay.
Yeah, it's just me. I
Okay.
just,
It could also be a cookies thing. I'm told that,
yeah,
like,
that might have, I just clicked on, and I'm on regulations on the website now, so.
okay, you
so
did find it?
worked, but it was a glitch that happened yesterday. That's why. I
Okay.
couldn't. Okay.
The internet Grinch at work. Okay, Carla, is that anybody else? Everybody clear as we can be on this deep subject? If we are, David has planned a little more entertainment for today. We've had some of the questions that we got at our August 4th public Zoom meeting was, how can I pay for this? Who will help pay for it? Where do I? And legitimate questions. I'm not making light of them at all. And so, David, you've got some folks that are going to speak to that for us.
Yeah, we do. Thank you, Ken. We have Hannah Niley and Ethan Gaddy, Essex County and Warren County, collectively, respectively. And Ethan and I have been chatting just a little bit about how the Warren County program is run. We had some questions about means testing or not, how the program is functioning, if all the cash went out, how it's all working. I asked if he might be able to talk a little in Warren County experience, but I'd like to start with Hannah, if we could, and just find out how the Essex program is going. She sent a little snippet to me, but if she can kind of talk about how the Essex County program is going and how we might be able to assist in getting the word out, that'd be great. And then we'll turn it over to Ethan for the Warren County program. So Hannah, what do you say?
Yeah, I can go first. So we have had, fortunately, 3 rounds of funding from EFC. The first round, we got 150,000, and it was for the targeted areas of Lake Champlain and Willsboro Bay. So basically the town of Willsboro. It was for 150,000, and 8 of those replacements went to the bay and 8 of those went to the lakeside. The funds were spent within 12 months. It went really fast. Again, those were like 16 recipients. It's a $10,000 grant or 50% of the project costs up to that $10,000 limit. So most of my septic system replacement project costs are coming in at between like 20 and 25. But some of them have been in the lower end, depending upon obviously how large they are, where they are, and all that good stuff. Some of them have been only like 16 or 15,000. And then we were awarded a second round, and the 2 targeted areas were just Willsboro Bay and Lake George. And we were awarded 170,000. I have those funds completely allocated for. Some projects are still kind of being caught up because of COVID and contractors being behind. But I've been in contact with all the property owners. They're all still moving forward. 10 of those went to Willsboro Bay and 7 in Lake George. And recently we were just awarded a third round of funding, which when I spoke to DEC, they had told me over the phone, we got 300,000. However, we got the grant agreement yesterday and we actually got 340,000. So those projects have been awarded so far and all of them have been in Willsboro Bay. With this program kind of rolling out the same time this regulation is coming out, obviously we would love to see, because I have still $300,000 available in grant, some residents of Lake George that know that they have a failing or likely to fail system, they would be eligible as long as they're within 250 feet of Lake George. And as I said before, the requirements as far as the design and enforcement, Essex County doesn't have a county engineer. We don't have a county health department. We don't have county codes for zoning. So a lot of it falls back onto the town of Ticonderoga. And I have yet to work with the codes officer in the town of Ticonderoga because my 7 pending projects happen to all be in Lake George. But what I've done with Willsboro so far in order to get the grant reimbursement is they issue a wastewater treatment permit after they receive copies of an engineered design applicable to DOH and DEC standards. And they issue a permit, and then the codes enforcement officer will go at the very end of the project and issue a certificate of compliance, basically making sure that the project was done correctly. And then our county attorney actually added an additional contract between the property owner and the county themselves, since we're the ones facilitating the money. And basically it's a term and condition statement issuing responsibility for their septic system, including like maintenance, operation, and future replacements, obtaining proper permits, acknowledgement of reimbursement of project costs, meaning that they upfront all of the costs, we're not responsible for any of it, and a defense and identification clause, and they must hire insured contractors. It's something that our auditors require. It's actually proof, like a COI of the facility. So that was added as well. And it's been very successful. Like I said, the first round went within like a month or so. The money was spent within 12 months. Round 2 went quickly, but the projects kind of are at a stalemate because of our short construction period and everybody kind of playing catch up from the pandemic. But with this flushed round of funding, I can send whomever, I can send this committee kind of a flyer of basic information and to pass out to property owners that you guys know are on Lake George. And it also includes businesses. So if there's lakefront businesses, we don't consider like income as an ineligible thing because the vast majority of these residents are seasonal homeowners. And what we found, again, Willsboro Bay has been awarded 3 times, and there's been like a total of, 32 septic system replacements and still counting. It's one town. So I can't even imagine the amount that you guys probably have down in that area that potentially could take advantage of this program. And obviously it's Essex County, so it's basically the town of Ticonderoga would be working with me. That's the basis of the program. You guys have any questions?
And it would be helpful. We're going to get a lot of questions on, oh my God, if I have to replace my system, what's a ballpark cost? It sounds like you have some real world current examples because they're required to send you that information, correct? Could you,
Yeah.
I assume it's public. Could you, if you have it summarized, send that down to me? Same thing with you, Ethan. I think just so we have an understanding of system replacements can range from here to here. The average being this would be, we don't want to make it up and tell people, yeah, you can get a new septic for 15 grand when your data is saying otherwise. So sometime over the next month or 2, if you could compile that and send it, that'd be very helpful.
Yeah, no, I can do that. I will tell you guys, the contractors down in that area are a lot more expensive. I did notice there's between the submissions that I've gotten from the northern area, Willsboro versus Ticonderoga. Granted, those were all estimates, but they were significantly higher. And I don't know if that's because of, obviously there's a lot of properties on ledge down there. So some people had to like longer pipe, there's pump stations involved. So obviously that can get quite expensive depending on the geographic impacts of the area. But I can send you an average for sure.
Yeah, and if they can divide it between the two locations, that would be helpful too.
Yep.
Or I can divide them when I get the information. So thank you.
Yep.
Dave, the Lake George Association Waterkeepers Safe Septic Guide, which they update, has a very good appendix and information about septic system costs and different types of septic systems and the range of costs that they've put in their program. So that might be another source of information for you to be able to use, but I used it a lot in our white paper and it's quite extensive.
Good. Thanks.
And Hannah, just for clarification, I didn't quite hear what you said about whether this is for seasonal or year-round residents.
It's either or.
Either or, perfect.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thanks, Hannah. Ethan?
Yeah, so we did not get awarded first round funding for Lake George for the septic replacement program. We did get round 2 last year for $340K, and then round 3 this year for $595,000. We are waiting for the finalized agreement with the state before we can start addressing the backlog of applications that we already have. We do have a pretty substantial backlog right now. And once we get the finalized agreement, we'll be in a better position to send out those letters and figure out how much money we have to allocate to new projects, how we solicit those versus all the old backlog of projects, because there was such a demand for it. It was really helpful to have Dave Miller help advocate on our behalf to elected officials and other state officials to get this additional round of funding. That was good to communicate our level of need. Our projects are a little bit higher than Essex County. We crunched some of the numbers. We're looking at, it's closer to $30,000 on average, but there are those unique situations where you see somebody with like a $70,000 replacement where they have to do extensive blasting and excavating, something like that. So, we think that this program, the septic replacement program is a good resource for people. It's certainly not going to address all the people that are impacted by this new inspection program. I think there's only a few hundred, between approximately 250 parcels that'll be subject to these inspections that will not be covered in the Warren County Septic Replacement Program. And then if you look at the average of saying, hey, there's a 20% failure rate or something like that, then all of a sudden it's sort of a manageable number of septic systems that we anticipate will need to be replaced that aren't covered by the septic replacement program. And there's going to have to be some sort of, I would encourage people to think about some alternative programs that we could pursue in order to connect these property owners with resources. We've looked at USDA grants. They have pretty low income eligibility requirements. We are spending a little bit of time looking at restore grants through Homes and Community Renewal. This is a program there are income and age eligibility requirements on it. And there's some administrative hurdles and timing considerations, but those are things that we're also going to be looking at to see if we can offset any potential impacts on residents. I think, and I've spoken to Walt and Dave about this a little bit, I think we are going to have to continue to be creative with finding ways to make sure that some of these upland residents that aren't on the waterfront, that are on the tributaries, do not get impacted by these regulations in such a way that it displaces them, or all of a sudden someone faced with a $30,000 septic replacement bill says, you know what, I'm just going to sell the property and leave. And I think, we have a 5-year period as these things roll out. I think that we're going to need to continue to talk, whether it's, the park commission, municipalities, the county, LGA, to make sure that we can at least identify the places that are most likely to have potentially negative impacts, displacing people, and just be proactive with it.
Dave, let me just add to Ethan, and thank you, Ethan, and your efforts, and Claudia and Hannah and all on the funding. I don't see the current year funding as a ceiling. I see us going a lot higher. It's a lot of times based on need. A lot of times there's a delay in understanding what the need is. I'll be polite saying when it gets to Albany. And there's a huge backload of money in that fund. And it was replenished with more money this last budget year. So we're going to fight very hard to get that monies to Warren and Essex County to closer to over the $1 million mark, because the need would surely document it as we move forward.
Yeah, just kind of want to piggyback off that. I get calls from DEC a lot in regards to Essex County's need, and they were kind of putting like a study together. And when you look at Essex County as a whole, being such a rural county, we have entire towns that are septic systems. We don't have a lot of municipal sewer. So when they were asking, well, how many private septic systems do you have? It's the vast majority of our residents have septic systems. So they also kind of have to delineate away from just waterfront properties and consider tributaries and other things in communities that eventually impact all of our water. So, I mean, obviously it's great that they're taking, to do this now, but there's definitely a need, and there'll always be a need. But one thing I wanted to talk about additional funding is our office. I work for the planning office at Essex County, and we have this one small condensed area in the town of Willsboro called Buena Vista. And it's a community that basically was supposed to be seasonal camps that have turned into year-round homes. And over the years, it's just very, very overpopulated, and there's just raw sewage leaking right into the lake. So we've looked at different options as far as putting a wastewater treatment plant down in the area. But the burden to the users would be like $700 a quarter. And that would be like if we maximized our grant opportunity with water infrastructure grant, with EIL money. It's just because the users are so small, and then you have a high debt payment and high operation and maintenance. So anyway, getting to the other aspect of it, we looked into doing like a septic system management plan, kind of like what this committee has done, doing the district, having grant funds kind of start like an operational budget that we could potentially use for inspections, pump outs, to assist in replacements. And we met with some state officials, and they didn't want to touch it because, again, it gets into the liability of, okay, if the town and the state put money into this fund, and we will start replacing septic systems and doing inspections and stuff, like the liability to the town, like who owns it, it just gets a little bit crazy. So their team of lawyers at the state level just said, it's just easier to do this quick, like, hey, we'll give you 10,000, you take care of it, you pay for it, we'll just help a little bit here and there. Because what we wanted to do, and I'm actually going to use this great plan as an example to a couple of our communities to start doing, was to basically go after grant funds to start it before we hit everybody up for like an annual payment. But they didn't want to do that. So.
Very good. Thank you, Hannah. Is anyone on the call familiar with the Washington County program? Kathy?
Thanks, Dave. I was going to interject the fact that I can't think of her name, but she came to one of our Land's End Road Association meetings at Hewlett's Landing a year and a half ago. and was so helpful. And I know of a couple of people that have applied for the money, and I guess the way the procedure was, like we've heard, is that you have to submit your invoices that you've done, you know, after the project is done, and then you will get them, you know, get reimbursed up to $10,000. But I'll tell you, she was very, very helpful, and she made a lot of people feel very good.
Thanks, Kathy. Ethan, I know you had some thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's not about Washington County, but just in general, as we think about how the septic replacement program, and you know, Dave mentioned that it could be ongoing, which we hope it is. You know, if we could communicate to the people that make the rules, the DEC, Environmental Facilities Corporation, about making the geographies of the septic replacement program align with that of the Lake George Park Commission inspection program, that might be an easier solution than find some alternative funding source. And if we have 5 years in which to start making that change happen, maybe we can start now.
Ethan, I'd be glad to work with you on that, and the council help push that in Albany with those folks, as well as increase the eligibility of water bodies in the Adirondack Park, because it's very limited right now to based where the overall needs are. So I'd be happy to help and work with you on that.
Fantastic.
Tom Jarrett?
Just to follow up with Kathy, it's Corinna Aldrich that is the Director of Soil and Water in Washington County, and she has been very helpful. The program seems to be running fairly similar to Warren and Essex counties. First come, first serve based, and then 10,000, I think, is what the number she's been using.
Right.
Very similar, but Corinna is the contact.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know Karina, I can reach out to her and find out where they sit on the program, so very helpful. Ken, that's all I had for a formal discussion today. Up to you if there's other topics that you wanted to highlight.
No, does anybody have any items to tie this all together?
I just had something quick to add. I don't know if Warren County or Washington County soil and water, but our soil and water, this is something that could come in at a later time. They do septic system maintenance training. They do for free, and they basically educate homeowners on what they should and should not be putting in their sewer system or private septic systems, like how often they should pump them out, signs of failure, all that kind of good stuff. And they've been looking for opportunities to kind of present that information. So I don't know if that's something, you know, once this kicks off and it becomes a regular, that's something you guys would be interested in participating in. I can get you their information.
Good, thanks, Anna.
Okay.
Ken, I just had one last question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, and I'm going to put my
not a
dunce.
problem.
I had my dunce hat on right now. I'm at the wastewater program regulatory review documents on the website. And I'm still trying to find which document would people use if they wanted to make a public comment, or is that link in the ENB, or can you put that link in clear language somewhere on the Park Commission website? Yeah. If you'd like to make public comments on these documents, here's how.
Yeah, we can absolutely do that. Justin can work on that tomorrow.
Okay, because I just couldn't find what to.
Yeah,
and Justin, when you have that, that's great. I can put it in my action alerts out to all our members to write in support of these regulations.
Yeah, our current challenge is no one at the office can look at our website because we cannot access it. So I do it from my phone. Justin does it from his phone. He's working with our IT to get it fixed that, but it's been eminently frustrating trying to upload all of our regulatory documents from phones and from his house. So we're working on that, and we'll hopefully get
all right.
progress.
I'll put a hold on what I'm going to do until I get all your information. Okay. I just want to make sure I get it right.
Yeah, sure.
We want to flood you with letters of support.
That would be fantastic.
That is fantastic. And interrupt me if somebody has another bona fide comment, etc. But I'm still amazed at the amount of help that we have received from this group and the depth of knowledge and assistance offered, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I go on for 20 minutes, but I'm not going to. With that, we'll adjourn till whether we'll ever meet again like this or not. I'm not sure. Maybe a possibility because bugs always come along, but it's just greatly appreciated by the Park Commission for how we got to where we got.
And I
And
want to
thank
thank all of you for letting me sit in on all these sessions as a volunteer outside the formal process. And I look forward to seeing and meeting many of you in person at the public hearing because I've only met you through Zoom.
Sure. You're always welcome to come to our Park Commission meetings, which are normally the fourth Tuesday of every month, and they're posted. This month, it's the third Tuesday, which is, I think, the 20th coming up, maybe next Thursday. So anyways, having said that, I'm going to bid you all adieu and thank you.
Great, thank you, and congratulations for getting this far.
Thanks, guys.
Bye all.
Take care.